All right, let's settle an old score. For the longest time, the recipe for speed was written in Detroit. You know the one. Big engine, loud noises, and just raw power. But while that was happening, a totally different kind of performance revolution was brewing over in Japan. And this isn't just about two countries building fast cars. Nope. This is about two completely clashing philosophies. This is the story of how Japan didn't just decide to challenge American muscle, they decided to outsmart it.
And it really all boils down to two completely different ways of thinking. On one side, you have American muscle. Their motto was basically, there's no replacement for displacement. It was all about cubic inches, brute force, and just dominating that quarter mile. And then you've got the Japanese approach. Smaller engines, a whole lot of smart engineering, and this obsession with balance, precision, and handling. It really was the classic brains versus brawn showdown.
And look, that's not just some fancy talk. This quote right here gets to the absolute heart of it. The cars that came out of Japan during this time, well, they weren't just playing a different game. In many ways, they were winning it. They were living proof that, clever design and precision engineering could be a way more effective weapon than just sheer brute force. So, our story really kicks off in the 1970s. This is where Japanese engineers started turning what seemed like a major limitation into a huge advantage. See, back home, they were dealing with these really strict tax laws based on engine size. So building a giant V8 like the Americans, that was pretty much off the table. They had to get clever. And that necessity kicked off this wave of innovation that gave us some truly legendary cars.
First up is this little beast, the 1972 Mazda Savannah RX-3. And yeah, at a glance, it just looks like a cool, sporty little coupe. But you really can't let its humble looks fool you. Because under the hood, Mazda was hiding a piece of engineering that was, well, it was nothing short of revolutionary.
So instead of having pistons that thump up and down, the RX-3 used something called a Wankel rotary engine. The easiest way to picture it is a spinning triangle inside an oval-shaped housing. This was Mazda's absolutely brilliant workaround. The engine was tiny in terms of displacement, which meant it dodged those heavy taxes, but it revved like a superbike and made an unbelievable amount of power for its size. Just look at that number, 61 cubic inches. That's it. To put that into perspective for you, your typical American V8 back then was pushing 350, maybe even 400 cubic inches. And yet this tiny, buzzing rotary engine could get the RX-3 to 60 in under 9 seconds and hit 125 miles per hour. This wasn't just a car, it was a huge statement. Cleverness could absolutely go toe-to-toe with cubic inches.
All right, next up we have a car that didn't just make a point, it completely rewrote the rulebook for what a sports car could be. When the 1970 Datsun 240Z hit the scene, it was an absolute bombshell. It was proof that Japan could deliver stunning looks, amazing performance, and that legendary reliability, all for a price that made European car makers get really, really nervous.
I mean, the formula was just perfect. It had those classic long hood, short deck lines of a European GT. It had a smooth, powerful inline-six engine, and crucially, it had a fully independent suspension that made it handle like a dream. This thing wasn't just another straight-line muscle car, it was a proper sports car that went on to just dominate production racing, proving itself time and time again on the track.
Okay, let's jump forward in time a bit to the 1990s. If the 70s were kind of like a clever jab, the 90s were an all-out haymaker. Japan's economy was booming, and their car makers just unleashed this technological blitz on the world, creating some of the most advanced and capable performance cars anyone had ever seen.
And leading that charge was Nissan's 300ZX. This thing wasn't just an evolution of the old Z car, it was a full-blown revolution. It was a high-tech masterpiece that blended power, agility, and sophistication in a way that, had engineers at Corvette and even Porsche taking very, very careful notes.
Let's just talk raw numbers. 5.6 seconds to 60. In 1990, that was ridiculously fast. We're talking supercar territory here. It wasn't just keeping up with the Corvette. In many cases, it was leaving it in the rearview mirror. And it was competing with cars that cost way, way more.
And here's how they did it. The twin-turbo V6 was just the start. This car was a tech lover's dream. Four-wheel steering made it feel like it was pivoting around corners. It had a super sophisticated suspension that just glued it to the road and brakes that could stop a freight train. It was the whole package, crazy fast, but with absolute control. And just when you thought things couldn't get any more advanced, Mitsubishi basically said, hold my beer. The 3000 GT VR4 wasn't just a car, It was a rolling declaration of technological dominance. It was like a glimpse into the future, packed with features that honestly seemed like they were pulled straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Just listen to this laundry list of tech. A twin-turbo V6? Okay, that's the baseline. Now add all-wheel drive for insane grip. Active aerodynamics, we're talking spoilers and wings that move by themselves. Four-wheel steering, again. And an adaptive suspension. This thing was basically a supercomputer on wheels, and it was on the streets in the early 90s. And all that crazy tech translated directly into breathtaking performance. 4.8 seconds to 60 miles per hour. Think about that. This wasn't just competing with American muscle anymore. This was stepping into the ring with Ferraris and Lamborghinis. It was a heavyweight punch from a country a lot of people still only associated with little economy cars.
So, we've seen the clever underdogs and the technological titans, but now we're going to talk about the icons. These are the cars that are so much more than just machines. They're legends, defined not just by how fast they were, but by their incredible stories.
Let's start with a Ghost, a car so mythical that diehard fans call it the Phantom. The 1973 Kinmary GTR was all set to continue Nissan's racing dominance, but its story? Well, it took a very different and a very, very short turn.
And this right here is the number that sealed its legendary status. 197. That's how many were ever built. Production got cut short after just 4 months, a casualty of the big oil crisis and stricter emissions laws. And that's what makes it a legend. It's this tragic story of unfulfilled potential, a ghost in the history of performance cars.
But if there is one single car that single-handedly changed how the entire world saw Japanese manufacturing, it has to be this one. Before the 2000 GT, Toyota was known for making, trucks and practical sedans. After it, the world knew that Japan could build a car with the soul, the beauty, and the performance of Europe's absolute finest.
This timeline just shows how unbelievably fast the 2000 GT became an icon. It stunned the entire world in '65, it was out there breaking records by '66, and by '67, it was a frickin' Bond car. This wasn't just an automobile, it was a cultural phenomenon. And with only 337 ever made, it was always destined to become one of the most sought-after cars on the entire planet.
So, after looking at all these incredible machines, what's the legacy here? What did this decades-long rivalry between these two totally different ideas of performance ultimately teach us about what makes a car fast and, exciting?
Well, the journey is just incredible when you think about it. It started with these clever workarounds like the RX-3's rotary engine, which was all about finding performance inside strict rules. Then it evolved into the balanced brilliance of the 240Z, and it all culminated in these technological knockout punches from the 300ZX and the 3000 GT. But they all prove the same fundamental point. There's more than one way to build a muscle car. And of course, that brings us to today. The old debate of small engine versus big engine, it's kind of being replaced by batteries and electric motors that deliver instant, silent, massive torque. So it leaves us with this one final thought. If it's not about cubic inches or clever turbos anymore, what actually makes a car a muscle car here in the 21st century? That's definitely something to think about.